So we have the Black Ops 7 Warzone integration, which added 30 different weapons, but generally, as we know, it comes down to a handful of weapons that are going to be meta. The video is focusing on the Black Ops 7 weapons that were added. I was able to get all the information on those, see a little bit of hand testing to kind of see how they feel, and give you some starter loadouts. And then I got to go through manually and test all the various weapons to make sure they didn't change a bunch of stuff with that, but we'll get into that. I did update the spreadsheet, so it does have all this information, but only the Black Ops 7 weapons are updated and in these numbers. So what I did is I actually made separate columns on the far right, which is linked near the top of the description for that spreadsheet. If you want to go over here and kind of see, okay, what's the practical TTK? And then also the chart that's linked with that, you get the TTKs compared. Obviously, these are all the various ones from the previous, but I went and added a couple towards the bottom so you can kind of see what the TTKs are up close. We know that the MPC 25, 560, that's very fast up close TTK. You can see the drop off is 14 meters. JGOD, or however we're going to be calling that one, also looks pretty fast, as well as the Carbon, the Ryden, all around, and the Razor 600. You can see kind of them all falling around that spot. Damage per mag is probably the best on the Carbon, just because it gets a 60 round mag versus the other ones. And then you can kind of see the next drop off. So the JGOD pretty good after that first drop off, up to about 20 meters. So that's a close range meta. And then we also have the medium range, I guess long range meta, which is this 40 meter drop off. It's a little bit behind my camera. I just moved it over. And then we can see that the Warden, killing pretty quick, but that's like a theoretical TTK more than anything because of how the TTKs work. It's factoring in the headshot damage a little bit too high, even though I think the Warden can kill quick and would delete someone. They go, what the heck happened? I think realistically it's less practical, especially with that 8-round mag. Peacekeeper is amazing sniper support. It's probably the best up close. The MXR is a little bit better up close, but overall, like the trade-off, you got all the way up to 41 meters. So I think the Peacekeeper is going to take that like top sniper support loadout, and especially for resurgence maps if you're playing Haven's Hollow or Rebirth Island. And then you can kind of see where everything else lays out. When we look at that 40 meter range, you can see some of the other guns that might make it in the mix. The XM325, the MK78, these are both LMGs, both pretty even there. The X9 Maverick, the M15, you can see the Mirage where that's at. I think the Mirage is just generally easier to use, and the damage drop off goes up to 60 meters, whereas you can see these other ones are 55. So the Mirage ends up making the list because it's close range TTKs, pretty competitive, and then the middle range up to about 60 meters is a little bit further than some of the competitors. So that's kind of that part. You'll have access to both of these. Personally, I think with the way the balance is with Survivor, I don't think snipers are probably gonna be the way to go. But if you do want to use a sniper, the versus Recon is probably gonna be the way to go. And like I already mentioned, the Peacekeeper is gonna be the go-to for the combination there. So this is gonna be the attachments all laid out there, and then nice little pretty there is the build code, which for a lot of times it's just going to be easier to copy the attachments over rather than reading out that RO121WL whatever in that area. And then we'll go ahead and go with the Peacekeeper, which this one's more built for sniper support. I think you could modify it a little bit to give it a little bit more ADS speed. If you want to go that route, you could drop the barrel and then maybe go for something that'll help you with that, like the cuff barrel. That'll go ahead and help out with that, but it will give you a little bit more recoil if you're truly leaning into more of the close range aspect of the weapon. In terms of sniper, you kind of see how that part works. Overall versus Recon, I don't think the snipers are going to be necessarily the right way to go. And then you can see Peacekeeper, very low recoil, ELO, very good, easy to use, decent mag, nothing crazy, but overall pretty solid. Keep in mind that as we go through the loadouts, I know some people will want to just skip to the last loadout. It's still too soon. Way too early to definitively crown a specific weapon, especially when there's some outliers that will get patched. As we get into the XR3 Ion, this is completely bugged and broken. I wouldn't say bugged because it's just way more damage than intended, and it is completely broken, and it's likely to get patched. So if you're trying to get your Warzone kills, I would do it before it gets patched because it'll be a hot fix probably pretty quickly because it has that 3-round burst rotation and it takes 2 or 3 shots to kill. It's pretty much going to delete people in like 300 milliseconds or less because of that delay in the way the rotation of the burst works. But overall, that's kind of how you build it out. get decent bullet velocity, 1300. And then we have the Ryden, which is kind of in there. You kind of saw that based off the TTK. There are a lot of things that are close. I think as we get more in line, there's going to be a bunch of Black Ops 6 weapons that probably fit into the mix as well. But we'll have to see kind of how they balanced out and if they actually adjusted a lot of those weapons. It's far too many to get done in the first day, but I thought at least I'd give you at least a baseline meta start and then go from there. So overall, the XR is not going to be anything crazy, but that the 3-round burst is the crazy part, right? You can see it killed them even at that distance, even though they're fully plated. So it was just the one burst and it got the kill. So it's pretty disgusting. Not much to react there. So that's kind of a problem. So we'll see kind of how they balance that out, because that's definitely not intended. And I think because even if you're running Survivor, the headshot's not going to matter because the gun's not doing the one-shot hit. So you're going to have to balance it out some other way. I'm not sure exactly. They're just going to have to mitigate the damage so that it does, I don't know, less than 100 per shot easily, so that even if you did get 3-round bursted, you wouldn't be instantly deleted. MXR, fun weapon, a little bit more punishing because of the fire rate is lower at 500, but overall kind of built out there. You could even have less recoil with the monolithic. You could swap that to like the compensator or something like that, but the gun is very low recoil because of the slower fire rate. It resets itself. One thing you'll notice too is certain guns may have like a little bit of an issue on the kick, and that's when we'll lean into the first shot recoil. As you can see right there behind the camera, let me move myself real quick there. First shot recoil control. And that's the one that you'll want, especially if a gun has a little bit of jump. And there are a bunch of these SMGs where we do put our optic on of it just because it looks ugly. You'll see the comparison. What we'll do is just show that example. This one is the JGOD. This is the brand new gun. I think its max level is 39. I got it to 38. So we can get you a solid build here. But overall, there's a bunch of reflex sights that I think work really well with the gun here. But it's really going to just depend on preference. TTK is pretty solid on that. JGOD, it has that initial kick, which I'm not really a fan of. Even with that initial quick recoil, it still has a lot of climb, but you can kind of see it's pretty manageable up close, and it does have a pretty decent TTK. Once it gets about 15-ish meters, though, it's where it gets a little bit hard, especially because of the way the damage drop-off works on all the SMGs around that 12, 13 meters. You're going to definitely notice the TTK fall off from here to there. And this was a pretty big problem in Black Ops 7's multiplayer because of those drop-offs were pretty extreme. So this is going to bring us to the LMG with the Razor. So we got the MK78 with the Razor 9mm. And then this is kind of how we have it built out. You could use an extended mag or something like that. 75 bullets is pretty solid. You don't really need to go much beyond that. If you feel like the first shot, you could always swap, something for that. Also for the Razor, we have it set up here for this, and we unfortunately need an optic. You'll see the before and after. We're going to show that really quickly. So you'll see it definitely does need the optic. So this one, you're gonna do pretty well with it. And then when we get this one, this is how it looks with the Elo sight. Again, lots of shots to kill. Once you get beyond that 13 meters, it's going to be a little bit harder. So the defined ranges are pretty clear with the SMGs. And just to show you, I want to go ahead and take that optic off just so you can see the comparison here, because the gun is very ugly without that. Even if you want to save the attachment, it ends up being really blocky like that and really hard to see. So that's why we're using the Elo. So if you're wondering, oh man, you can save attachment there. That's really one of the reasons why I think they really should invest in a 5 attachment system with the optic being free. And then that would really open up some of these guns to be able to a little bit more versatile. Because if this was on borderline not competitive in the TTK department, then it just wouldn't get picked because you would end up not being able to overcompensate for those areas. But since it kills quick enough, you're good to go. So here's another one, the D20 Mirage, DS20 Mirage, and then the MPC25. So we can kind of see this here. Biggest problem with this gun, as we talked about and gassed up earlier in the breakdown, is that it has a decent range up to that 60 meters. Pretty low recoil, but its reload is pretty slow. So that's kind of how you have it built out. You'll go ahead and see kind of here. So overall, kills pretty quick. Got all the way over there. That's 50 meters. So 60 meters is a little bit further, but then the reload is atrocious. So that's kind of the drawback of that one. This one has plenty of iron sights. You could rock Nilo if you wanted, but I think even though this ugly rear sights in your face, but that's kind of where we're at now. I wouldn't necessarily crown one of the number ones, except for the Ion being a little bit broken, but I think that's going to get nerfed. And I think so far people are really enjoying the update. I think they wish the Avalon drop today, but besides that, I think people are liking the new map. We'll kind of see where it goes. Let me know in the comments what you're liking. See you on the next one. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.